Mark Watts, Elitefts.com. I'm here at 11 Athletics in Columbus, Ohio, and this is part of our Sports Performance Coach Education Series. We're going to talk about a four-step process to make your training session more productive. And this is a process that stems back from educational models, and hopefully this will give you some different strategies, maybe just a different viewpoint on how to get more out of your training sessions, whether you're in a private setting, semi-private, or if you're with a large group setting. So with this four-step process, starting with the initial setting objectives, and this is really, we'll go into detail with this, but just really establishing your expectations for the training session. And obviously this can go through with setting expectations for the entire training cycle that you're going through. But the next part is the preparation or the planning. And really, there's an old Woody Hayes quote is, if you have an hour-long practice, you should be meeting for 2 hours to prepare for it. And that is somewhat true. The more you can prepare for something, obviously, the better you can overcome some of those obstacles that come up. Because again, training sessions, you know that there's always going to be issues that come up. The next part is the actual instruction. The demonstration, the actual process of teaching those individuals what you want. And then the last part is the evaluation. And that evaluation being very important and being very creative on how you evaluate the task at hand. And then at the end, we're going to talk about how this whole cycle goes both directions. So talk about the objectives, and again, what are your expectations for the training session, which is vitally important when you're, this is something that I think we get as coaches, we get too sucked into here's the workout, let's get the athletes in and out. I know I was in that situation. We'd have athletes coming in large teams and in large groups and multiple groups at one time when you're trying to get them to get through the workout and get out. And I think one thing that can help you is just establishing those objectives. What are you trying to accomplish? Not only as the athlete, as a team, but also as a coaching staff too. So looking through again, what's your technical goals? Are you trying to improve technique? Are you introducing a new movement? Are you trying to get them better proficient at a specific skill set for that training session? Do our squats look better? And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be quantitative all the time. It could just be, hey, listen, we look more explosive when we're doing our change of direction drills. We look better when we're doing our overhead press stuff, whatever it may be. The second part is the performance goals. And again, with the performance goals, and again, are we hitting our numbers? And this will all kind of come get full circle here. But again, are we hitting our numbers? Are we? And again, it could be just are we with our questionnaires? Our RPEs are off, or we're just not feeling it. But really, performance-wise, are we doing what is prescribed in our program? And then the last is the tempo goals. And tempo meaning exercise density. Are we doing what we need to do in terms of getting through the workouts? Are we having any kind of log jams at certain areas? Are we having a good flow from space to space inside the weight room? And those are things that you have to evaluate as a coaching staff as well too. So going through, next part is preparation. And this is really something that we get into that situation where we just don't have time to plan a training session because they're back to back to back to back to back. And the last thing you want to do at the end of the day is keep your staff there for longer. So sometimes that has to happen early in the morning. Sometimes it has to happen on the fly. But really, the more you can prepare for a different training session, the better. And some things that helped us is just a setup. Whether it be having all your prehab stuff set up, whether having your foam roller set up in a certain area, just getting all your equipment set up the way it needs to be, all the chains, set up in a certain way, or bands, whatever it may be, but just everything so things flow. And when the athletes see what's ahead of them, a lot of times they're going to start to prepare what the task is at hand. So not only are things written down, but things are just physically set up the way they need to be in order to facilitate a more productive workout. The next part is just assignments, and this is something that we did is really assign training groups by a couple of different factors. Number one, maybe it's experience. Maybe you want to match up a younger athlete with an older athlete. Maybe you want to get the strongest athletes all together so they have less weight change. And again, their pace is going to be a little bit different if they have to do more warm-up sets to work up to a certain weight. So really just taking through and looking at all the numbers that are on the sheets and just basically assigning those these 4 guys, these 5 guys, whatever it may be, they're going to be on this rack. Also, another thing would be just setting them up by height. That happens for a lot of sports like basketball or volleyball, where you just have some discrepancies in height. Football is another one. So again, setting those athletes up, by height, all of a sudden that changes a lot when you're talking about just, having where the J-hooks need to be set up in the rack. So those are type of things that assigning those athletes to those particular groups can really help, and it can also, you can rotate those up through too. It keeps things a little more fresh with that. And the last part is competition, and again, just making sure things are organized. If you're doing speed groups and you're doing any kind of competitive drills, if you're doing any kind of like we used to do a strongman Grand Prix, being organized on how those athletes are going to be placed as far as the order, as far as who's matched up with who, and just basically getting that and making sure that the athletes know what they're expected and what is expected of them is vitally important. So the next part is actually the instruction. And again, this is something I got from Jeremy Boone, was the 5 E's, and I just love it because I think it's very important. But and when you're looking through it, again, creating the environment of when you're going through the actual workout, the actual training session, make sure that the athletes are in an environment where they're ready to work. And you are, like Todd Hammer says, are you the thermostat or the thermometer, and you have to set that. The next one is be an example, making sure that you're conducting yourself. The worst thing is that when you have an athlete if you have be doing a behavior that is not modeled correctly, and you can reprimand him for doing a behavior that you're not even modeling. So that's always important. Communicate your expectations. That's huge. And again, that's goes back to the 3 signs of a miserable job with Lencioni. Do I know if I'm doing a good job or not? And if I don't know what's expected of me, it's hard for me to really understand number one, how the process is to accomplish that goal, but number 2, again, whether I've accomplished what I need to accomplish. So make sure that the expectations are set. The next thing is, depend on your experience. If you're a coach, you've been in a situation where you've had athletes in similar situations. You know that, again, one team is running late because conditioning ran over, and another team had to come early because for whatever they had academic meetings. You have to be able to a situation where you've been in that situation before, and you really have to rely on that experience to make sure that things run smooth for the athletes. You could be kind of frustrated in your head, but if the athletes see that, that's not, they shouldn't have to worry about the logistics of the workout. They should just be worried about being in a situation they can work hard. The next thing is, bring in the energy. And again, I know that, talked to a lot of coaches about this and talked to Callie Hinsman about this just recently about, athletes can see if you are not all about it, they see that right away. And if you're not excited about this training session, it's very hard for you as a coach to expect them to be. So that's really a valid point to really make sure that they can see that you are as excited about that training session as they are, and even more so. That has to come off in your demeanor. The other thing is, again, we'll go over with the level series, and again with the instruction, with coaching. The one thing we always do with our level series, and I'll talk about this a little bit in detail at another webinar series, but really with those levels, do I know how to instruct? Can I explain an exercise, and can I demonstrate it? And that's basically our level 1 for any kind of coach. And level 2 is, can I identify technique discrepancies? That's something that, again, that's something probably when you plan to be able to talk to those athletes and to be able to talk to your coaches about what you're looking for. And then the third level is if I have coaches that can, not only can they explain and demonstrate, can they identify technique discrepancies, but can they formulate corrective strategies, whether it's an acute effect by just changing foot placement or hand placement, whatever it may, or giving them some either verbal or tactile cues or physical cues that they can understand, or is it a longer term strategy where, hey, listen, we have some muscular imbalances we have to take care of, but just looking at you squat, I know that we need to take care of this, and this. So those are basically the 3 levels that we evaluate coaches, or used to evaluate coaches on, and I think it's important that is something that which coaches are able to do what, and if they're always at least at that level 1 position. So going through evaluation, again, this is something, when you're looking through the difference between, I've heard this, several times before, and I don't know who from, but again, a screen is just basically, can the athlete do it or not? This is FMS. This is giving you just a basic score. This is a sickle cell test. Those are just the basics. When you're looking through assessments, now again, we're looking at, how are they squatting? How are they doing their lunge warm up? Are they able to execute some different movements? And we're just evaluating how they move and really, how they feel and those different aspects of the training modality. The other one is going to be performance testing. Now this is your 5-10-5 or your 3-rep max, whatever it may be. But again, there is a difference on that. The one thing that I feel strongly about is the standards, and that's something that's maybe missing evaluations. This is something in education. I think that a lot of times we're in a situation where we don't have enough variety and we don't have the applicable evaluation measures to really see how that different students learn different ways, different athletes excel in different modes. So it's important that you're basically those evaluation methods they're valid and they're reliable to give you the best data to formulate how to correct any of those discrepancies they might have from a performance standpoint. So the standards really, Dan John had said if you have a high school football team and every single athlete on that team, at least the first, whatever it may be, the starting 44, whatever, can every single one of them can, front squat 205, bench press 205 and power clean 205. Most people say, well, that's not very hard for a high school athlete. But think about that. Think about your team from top to that first 44 being able to do that. And again, we switched to a standard type system instead of rewarding that being someone that's always looking at that record board. And again, every school in America has a record board, something to strive for. But one thing that we've done that I got from Jack Hayden with Denison, which was, I think, very applicable for what we wanted to do, was the standards. And again, it was simple, and it could fit. You could fit it anywhere you want to, but ours was just, it might have been, squat plus 150 pounds of your body weight. We didn't want to do a percentage of body weight because it's different for different positions, but it was, you should be able to clean your body weight plus a certain amount, whether it was 50 or 75, I can't remember exactly, but having those standards, like this is the standard, this is the bare minimum. If you're a female college athlete, you should be able to do whatever, 3 pull-ups, you should be able to bench 50% of your body weight for this much, but having those standards sometimes gives you a little bit different, a way to approach their performance in the weight room. So, and again, this is a two-way process. This is just to finish up. So when you look at this, it's a two-way. It goes each direction. So the one thing that when you look at these evaluations, whether it's standards, whatever it is, you have to look back and say, okay, we didn't accomplish what we wanted to accomplish, right? The density, we didn't get as much work in. There was a little bit too much, too much standing around within a workout. The athletes weren't doing this, drill correctly. Now you have to go back, and it depends on what the issue is and how far you go back. So again, it might be the instruction. So are we teaching this the right way? Are we asking, the athlete to do something they're not prepared to do? Are we, the way that we're teaching it and the environment we're teaching it in, and again, is it applicable to implement a new exercise variation at this point of their training cycle? Are we asking them to do a power exercise after a 2-hour practice at this high of a percentage? That's the type of thing you have to say, how are you teaching it? Then you have to look back further. And if you think that you're teaching it correctly and they're in a situation, now all of a sudden you go back to the preparation, which both of those work together. Are we, putting those athletes in the best situation to succeed? Do we need to have this particular sport perform this exercise? Do we need to be testing this performance, evaluation for this sport at this time of the year? So again, it looks back to, are we instructing it correctly? Are we teaching it correctly? But also, is it in the plans? Are we planning it at the right time in a situation where the athletes can succeed at it? And I think that's the other part. And again, and if you go back further too, are we, and again, this all kind of ties together, are our objectives unrealistic? Is it unrealistic for us to do this much work within 55 minutes of the training session? Is it unrealistic to say that these athletes are prepared to be performing at this high of an intensity at this stage? Are our objectives not realistic? Are we asking too much of the athletes, or are we asking the right questions of the athletes? Should we evaluate the athletes on something else? And that comes all the way back to objectives. What are our objectives? What are our expectations of our athletes? And I think that's important that you look at that relationship between those 4 parameters of a coaching session, both directions. I think that's important because, again, your evaluation will tell you whether you're instructing correctly, whether you're planning appropriately, and really if your expectations are realistic. So that's something to really think about. Every training session you have, try to think about those 4 components and see if you can get a little bit better quality in every training session that you implement with your athletes. I know that there was times that I thought I was just winging it because we're just trying to get through. We're just checking boxes. We got through a workout, we got our athletes done, they did their work, and now they're gone, and then we'll start with the next group. Take a little more time to evaluate how you're doing more quality work, and I think you're going to get a little more out of your training session. So again, one of the things that I got this model from was just physical education textbook. Check us out on elitefts.com /categories /education for training articles and some coaching technique type articles that we'll have for you available. And if you have any comments or any kind of questions about this presentation specifically, there'll be an opportunity to do that in the article itself on elitefts.com. So thank you for listening. Appreciate it.